I'm starting by ending. I'm ending last week. That's what it is. But it flows beautifully into what we're going to be speaking about. As you see, I have here as what caused Yosef to reveal his identity. As happens with me quite often, after I write that down, have it done, I look and I said, that was dumb. Why did I write that? Caused is not a good word. What convinced is a much better word. It means almost the same thing, but not really. I think that's a better word. But you don't have to change it. I'm just telling you, Sometimes I wake up and I say, oh, English is a good language to use. Yeah, what convinced Yosef to reveal his identity? Now, I say that that's really what we're going to start with. I just want to finish up with not too long, although I've been wrong before when I thought I'd just do this in 5 minutes. But you might recall that when I was we were going through the whole story of Yosef, at least the last thing when we were going through the missions and the goal of the different journeys of the brothers to Egypt. You remember that I pointed out that there were actually 3 targets there and changes that were made. The last one was a national impact with the change of the leadership. That the leadership clearly moved from the Bechor, Reuven, to that of Yehuda. So that's what I'm going to finish up with. We started that last time at the end of the class, and I'm just going to finish up. See that? Another page or page and a half of notes. We should do that. And as I said, it's going to flow into what we're doing because much of what we're going to see with the leadership of Yehuda over that of Reuven is exactly how he presents himself to Yosef in begging for the life of Binyamin. And that's the last, can I say it's a soliloquy, really, of Yehuda before Yosef. Yes?
Another source sheet.
I have about 5 of them. How many do you want? I had an aunt, Shalom, wonderful aunt, very funny. We were very close. She lived around the corner. My mother and she were sisters, and we lived around the corner. And when I was old enough, I would often go off to the house because not only were they around the corner and close to my cousins and everything, but my uncle was a rabbi Rav for many years in shul, and so I would often go there to go through learning with him and so on and so forth. But she was very, very funny. So I would go up there and we had a conversation, and she would always say, I have some extra pictures from my wedding. Do you want my wedding picture? Because she said they made like 20 of them, and she gave out 2. She said she's been married about 40 years already, and whenever I came up, I said, you want to have my picture for the wedding? Because I have extras. So I had extras, but you only wanted 1. What can I do? I think I ended up taking 1 anyway. Anyway, this shift of leadership from Reuven to Yehuda becomes clear. At the very end of the second mission, when Yosef, the viceroy, set up Binyamin to end up being a slave for him for the rest of it, and everybody else should go home. Now, what was Yosef's thought process? We're discussing the possibilities. It could be that this is one brother he really never really knew, and that was a full brother, not a half brother. Wanted to have some time with him. Maybe wanted to give him great things in Egypt. Who knows what the thought was? And certainly it was also, as I think the Abarbanel pointed out, that Yosef was testing his brothers, that after all those years, did you learn something of what you did to me would you then take again the favored son, young son, from the other mother, not their mother, and I'll take them from you? What's going to happen? Could be. No one knows for sure. You have before Hashem, both the Ramban says this is probably what it is. He wants to make sure that the dreams came true, and Barbanel and others say that's not his job. Since when did he say, I'm going to see that my brothers did tshuva? Usually, what's the name of that? Yeah, God. He's the one who takes care of that. What right does Yosef have to really cause such terrible pain to his brothers, but more than that, to his father, by setting them back and holding back Shimon? What right did he have? But I just want to actually they did tshuva. Who said you the guys check that out? Kadosh Baruch Hu does a pretty good job in that. Now, why are you doing that? So there are those who disagree with that. But the concept of Yosef trying to see how they will now behave after these 22 years, how will they now behave when again the son of Rachel is going to be taken away? It could be a very, very strong possibility as to why he does this. Either way, when the viceroy, when Yosef tells the brothers, well, first of all, you can't deny it. The cup was in the satchel of Binyamin. You can't say he didn't do it, somebody else did it. It's right there. Clearly he was the guilty one. You can't say. So Yosef therefore didn't give any other option. He didn't say, I'll take somebody else. He said, well, and he says it again, that same idea he did before. I'm a very God-fearing, I'm a moral person. I would not punish someone who wasn't guilty for this. Your brother Binyamin was guilty. That's the only one who's going to be punished. Very, very moral. Meanwhile, the brothers are going crazy. Oh my God, what am I going to do? We go back to Papa. What's going to be? Whereas the first time when he takes away Shimon, he says, Achichem echad, one of the brothers I'll keep here, and the rest go home. Here he doesn't say one of the brothers. He says Binyamin has to stay here. So this wasn't the option. So despite the fact that there seems to be no option to do, Yehuda steps up. And he says, I'll tell you what the option is. I will replace him. I will be the slave. And he says that. And it's a tremendous sacrifice. It's not a matter of, like with Shimon, I'm keeping him in prison until you come home. This is a be forever thing. It means he's going to stay as a slave in Egypt to the viceroy. And there's no, in effect, real possibility for release. But again, Yehuda offers himself. And when he starts, as we'll see, he does so not only as me, but rather as a representative of all of the brothers. He, as we'll see here, he admits the collective guilt of all of them, and he says we're all guilty, not just Binyamin. That's how he tries to, in effect, say we're all guilty. Admittedly, the goblet was found in the possession of Binyamin, but it's all our fault. We're all guilty for what we had done. He said, he says the Elokim matzad avon avodecha. He said, Hinenu avadim ladoni. We will all be served for you because we're all guilty. It's the first sentence at the very end of the case. Yes.
It occurs to me this is another black mark against Reuben because he could have also said that.
Right, absolutely. That's where I'm saying the leadership shifts. It's not Reuven who steps up and says, I'll do this. He's now in the background. In the beginning of the whole story, the first one to speak up against the brothers was Reuven. He didn't speak up as we would have wanted him to do. He didn't say, "The Michigan is, what are you doing? You're going to kill our brother, But he did say, don't kill him, just throw him into a pit. Well, that'd be good, But and he had the plan to save him, right? But he didn't say that. He didn't say, I'm going to save him. He didn't tell them, I won't let you do this. And if he was the leader, he was the Bechor, it isn't that outlandish for him to have said that, especially in the ancient world. The older one, who was supposedly going to take on the mantle of leadership from the father, had every right to tell his brothers, Kindalach, don't do this. That's not what you should do. He had that power to do so. Now, I can go on and say, yeah, maybe so, if it weren't that Yaakov seemed to give the mantle of leadership on Yosef, which made everybody, and then maybe he wasn't seen that way. But either way, he should have been seen that way. And so he started that way, didn't do it completely, but he started. By this time now, you don't see him as a leader. Yeah.
Reuven could have also pulled Yosef out of the pit and take him back with him to Yaakov, because he went back. It was his turn to take care of Yaakov.
Once again,
so
you're
why
talking.
Did he pull him out and take him with him?
But he was going to. He didn't. You're again basing yourself on something which I said is a very difficult to understand. I don't think it has to. That Chazal meant you to take it literally. It makes no sense at all, because the traveling from Shechem down to Hebron is not 3 days. It may be more than that, and it has to go back and forth. So would he have left Yosef, say, I'm going to save him, but I'm going to go see Papa, and a week later I'll come and take him out? If he had exactly. So he wouldn't have had that as a plan to go back there. That's why I argue that it didn't. That he never went back. As soon as he saw that Yosef was in real trouble, he said, I'm going to save him, because the brothers now want to sell him as a slave. And he runs to take him out, and everybody knows now what happens when he went to go to take Yosef out of the pit. Yosef was not there. He had been taken away by the Midianim, which nobody knew. Not Reuven, not Yehuda, nobody knew that. So that's how his plan to save Yosef didn't work out. Didn't work out because while they were eating, and that's why the Torah says, Vayeshvu le'achol lachem. Why would they have to say that they had a pizza store? But why? Why do they have the Torah to say, and now they ate lunch? Very nice. Where do you see in the Torah? Someone says, and they sat down to have lunch. Why was that so important that the Torah had to include that? Because that explains why, while they were eating, they didn't know what was happening by the pit. And that Midyanim had taken him out. They didn't know that. That's so powerful, and why, again, he wasn't able to save Yosef, though he had every good intention. Bottom line is, by the time the second mission is over, Reuven, who had already been turned down by the father when he said, you can kill my children if I won't get Binyamin back. And Yaakov says, oh, you're a smart guy, right? Because I don't care about my grandchildren. So he was already set aside, it would seem. That leadership position that he perhaps could have had was lost by that time. Clearly, he didn't have the trust of his father, and the other brothers perhaps as well. Remember, the only reaction he had when they started getting into trouble, when they came back and they were accused of being spies, what was the reaction? They said, we're being for our sin. And the first one to speak up when they said that was Reuven, who said, I told you so. You were wrong. You sinned. So you see there, sometimes you just look at the text. When you read it, they say, it's telling you something. You feel already that he's trying to, I wasn't guilty, it was your fault. It was your fault. To get himself out of it. It's not us, it's you. So right there, that's not what a leader does. What does Yehuda do here? It's not him, it's all of us. The exact opposite of what Reuven does when they're just talking to each other, that first mission. Here he comes up in front of Yosef and he says, don't say it's only Benjamin, it's all of us, so I'll be a self. Unbelievable. And that's, again, the text. When you read it, and sometimes I close my eyes and think I'm in Egypt and think, what's happening? What would be the logical thing when I'm seeing this story? And when you see it as a logical story, this makes so much sense. And they see now the change of leadership from Reuven to Yehuda, right? At any rate, so this is what happens. Yehuda becomes really, and here is, as I just said, Yehuda saying that we're all guilty and we all must be really imprisoned, but I'll take over that job and let Benjamin go. And in fact, as we'll see, and I'll finish up with this ending and go right into exactly the plea of Yehuda. But in that plea of Yehuda, and I have it here also, that's right, in the third verse, but okay. We see Yehuda, when he goes to Yosef and says, okay, he begs for the life of Benjamin, and he does so by retelling the story. And when he retells the story, you'll see, I think I have it in the source that I said, you see, my Lord, and right after, please let me appeal to my Lord, my Lord asked his servants. Who was his servants? The brothers, okay? Have you a father or another brother? We told my Lord. Notice everything here is in plural. We told my Lord, we have an old father, but his father, and so on. So you said to your servants, bring him down. We said to our Lord, look at this. You said to your servants, everything is in plural. Part of that is what he's trying to convince. What? You don't have to tell. Since we are all part of this, don't take Benjamin. You had to punish somebody, but we're all guilty. And that's what he used. And this is, I think, one of the, we'll finish with this, tremendous proof of the, I want to say proper, but the leadership of Yehuda, how fitting Yehuda was to be leader, as opposed to Reuven, who says, you, him, they, your fault, not mine. Yehuda says everything as is we and we and we and we. Such is what a leader does, rather than looking at to avoid any blame and things like that. And now we're ready to start discussing, in fact, this very speech, soliloquy. Okay, we'll start that. Now, officially, I'm starting the new. Why do I have a problem here? Oh, I see. You see what happened? I've ended this with page 8 because I have page 5 afterwards, so I know that's the end. Of course, I have 9, 10, 11 that I hadn't seen before. All right, whatever it is. So I'm not going to go through and finish up what I had in my notes because it's one of the more complicated things to do. When I finish here, when we rushing to come out, I don't put my notes in order. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10, and 11 was someplace else. So what I am going to say, though, is that third part of what this mission did also was, and I pointed up to the level aspect of the story, is a theological one, and I touched upon that, so it won't be much here, and that is understanding the balance between the actions of man and the will or the intention of God in creating a reality that he wants. That's very interesting. Beyond the journey to tshuva, to repentance, that the brothers went through during these missions and during this whole saga of the brothers and Yosef. And as you mentioned, who would be the new leader, there's also a complicated, even the sensitive theological question of, who's to blame, God or them? That idea is really very real. I mean, it's really a problem. The two approaches, they're and they're opposite one of the other, right? There is Yosef. Yosef who goes through a process as well, and he eventually, at the end, as we'll see, realizes that all of these deeds and the decisions and the difficulties were all just a realization of a divine plan. So the reasons he ends up is saying, he says, don't feel so terrible that you sold me here down to Egypt, he says, because it's all God's plan. That acceptance of the idea that this is what God always wanted made it easy for him to forgive his brothers. It wasn't your fault. It's an interesting point. In effect, he said God did it, not you. Which is very nice to say, but I don't know if responsibility could then be easily shirked off the brothers. But as far as Yosef was concerned, he said he was able to swallow hard and say, you know what? In the end, when I look at everything, I'm sitting here as the second most powerful man in this empire. After all is said and done, and how did I get here? Oh, didn't I have some dreams? When I was 17, what did I have a dream of? That I would be having you bowing down to me, which they did, and that I would rule over you, and they yell, Hamaloch Timloch Aleinu, you think you're going to rule over us, and yet here I am doing just that. And they say God didn't have a sense of humor. Yeah, it's exactly that. So he sees that, and that says, okay, in the end, that's what God wanted. And that's who did. So my dreams were right, and so on and so forth. But with the brothers, it's something else. They go through a reverse process. They begin by saying, why did God do this for us? It's God's fault. Not that he wanted. Why did he do such a thing? It took them a while. They realized ultimately that it was our fault. See, whereas when Yosef says, it was not my brother's fault, God's plan. God, the brothers who started by saying, it's God's fault, why did he do this to us? They break down after everything happens and says, Chatanu, Avinu, Pashanu. We were the ones who sinned. It's our fault. They take responsibility on themselves. How ironic is this? Where Yosef, who was really the victim here, forgives the brothers because he sees them as merely a tool that God used for him. And the brothers, who were the offenders in the whole story, they start by saying, why did it happen? Like, we didn't do anything. To finally realize it's our fault and we sinned. So they now say, it's our fault. He says, it's God's fault. And that's what they go through. It's pretty, very, very, it's really powerful when you think about it. And you see that theologically, this is what goes through in this absolutely fascinating saga of the brothers and and Yosef. Amazing. I'm being very nice, and I'm stopping here, even though I realize I have 14 pages, and I'm only on page 8, 9. You want to leave? No, I got to stop with that. That was last week's year that I just finished. My goodness. I have a problem because I have to give new, titles to the next year, and I can't finish the one I want to. I hate when I gave part 2 because the money I got something new. But anyway, this is perfect because it really now moves into what this new class is going to be. This new shiur is going to be, because it is exactly that. What in the end, after all of the machinations, I should say, of Yosef, he figured out this: I'm going to have them like this. I'm going to make them spies. Then I'm going to tell them they can go back, but I'm going to give them their money so they can worry about it. But they have to bring down Binyamin. This is a whole plan he has, and it doesn't happen in 2 days. It was maybe a whole year, back and forth and back, coming to Egypt. Back, it was a long time. Very patient of him. Why does he break down? After all, he says, I want Binyamin here. And like I pointed out, I don't know, maybe he wanted him, to tell me what happened. What was Papa doing? What happened in these years? He hadn't been there from the time he was 17. He's now 39. What happened in this time? He needs his brother to tell him, again, that one full brother, and the one who didn't sell him, and the one who didn't hate him. He felt one. So he wanted them there. So why now, just when he had what he wanted, why does he break down? No, admittedly. Yeah.
I just want to make it clear. So you're suggesting he may not have, his initial plan was not to reveal himself. And
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Are you suggesting that his initial plan was that he should not reveal himself?
That he should not what?
Reveal himself.
Reveal himself. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not once, but twice we see that he's about to, and he breaks down in tears and he holds back. And says, Vayitapach Yosef Vayomer Simu Lachem. When they sat down that second trip, and they sat down and gave him a nice another lunch. This time the lunch was around his table. Again, I told you the connection to the when he was in the pit and they were having a lunch. Now he's sitting a whole table in Cairo, in the capital of the excited empire in Egypt, and he has them around the table, and he sees Binyamin for the first time. It says there he wanted to cry. And so he went to the outside room, he cried there. But he held back. Vayomer simu lachem. He said, okay, bring the food in and we'll have the food. That's what he said. He held back. And here, after the speech of Yehuda, we said, V'lo yachol Yosef l'hitapek. And Yosef could not hold back anymore. So he had been holding back this whole time, which seems to indicate that he really had planned of keeping Binyamin, and so long, goodbye, Auf Wiedersehen, that's it. So why does he break down here? Why did he hide his identity the first thing? Why does he accuse the brothers of espionage? Why does he imprison one and then the other? Why does he threaten to enslave now Binyamin? Why did he aggravate his elderly father? These are real questions, moral questions, and we question his behavior here, certainly, because we can live a couple thousand years later and be judging him. We become judgmental. And as I said, they thought, why didn't he send the postcard to his father? I'm doing okay, by the way, that I mentioned I'm also the viceroy of Egypt. And he doesn't make this connection, right? But as I've put up before, rather than asking that question and why he refused to reveal his true identity to the brothers, we'll ask the opposite, and that is, what was in the plea of Yehuda that so moved him that he finally broke down to reveal his identity. Whatever reason he may have had for his behavior, whether it was revenge, right, or an attempt, as I pointed out, to them to do tshuva and make sure they did tshuva. I think that's the Ramban, or because he hoped to make sure that his dreams would go true. You see, my dreams, I know I had these dreams, and I know they're from God, so I have to make sure they'll come true. So he has them bow down, and so on and so forth. Whatever those are the reasons, he would not have broken down and revealed his identity unless he had heard from Yehuda. There's something about I keep saying soliloquy, because that's what it is. There's a whole almost a whole paragraph of just Yehuda crying and talking and talking. It starts from the end of Parashat Miketz into Vayigash until the first Aliyah. That it's all Yehuda that's talking. And that's what makes him break down. So what was it about the soliloquy? What was it about the plea that made Yosef break down and reveal who he really was? So I'm not going to have you real. I was nice enough to give you just the English there. If you want to review it, you should review it. I think I'm going to review it for you because I think it's important for us to see what it is, even if it means that I'm going to have to continue this next class. Just make up a different title for it. Okay. And that is, Yehuda went up to Yosef, or then the viceroy, said, "Please, my lord, let me appeal to you," right? And don't be impatient with me, because you are equal to Pharaoh. You have that power. My lord asked his servants, "Have you a father or another brother?" And we told my lord, "We have an old father, and there is a child of his old age, but his full brother is dead, so that he alone is left without a mother, and his father dotes over him." That's what he's testing. "Then you said to your servants, 'Bring him down to me, so I may set eyes upon him.' So we said to the Lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father. If he were to leave his father, the father would die.' But you said to your servants, 'Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not be allowed to see me.'" So when we came back to your servant, my father, we reported my Lord's words to him. Later, our father said, "Look, go back and procure some food for us." But we answered, "We cannot go down unless our youngest brother is with us, for we cannot appear before the men unless our youngest brother is with us." Then my father said to us, "As you know, my wife bore me 2 sons, but one is gone from me." And I said, "Alas, he was torn by a beast, and I have not seen him since. But if you take this one from me too, and he meets with disaster, you'll send my old age to Sheol, to the grave," right, in sorrow. And therefore, he ends up his plea. "If I now return to my father without the boy, and since his own life is so bound up with his, then when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die, and we will have sent our father down to his grave in grief. Now, I have pledged myself for the boy to my father, saying, 'If I don't bring him back to you, I shall stand guilty before my father forever. Therefore, please let your servant remain as a slave instead of the boy. Let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father unless the boy is with me, lest I be witness to the woe that would overtake my father? Wow, that's a pretty powerful thing.
Wasn't the boy 25 years old?
Huh?
Wasn't the boy 25 years old?
Probably about 32.
About 32. And yet he was referred to as a boy. Because he
Yes,
was
as I mentioned on the lesson before, the baby of the family is always the baby. Tatala. You know, I told you, I was a tatala, and I came walking again, and people looking for somebody like this, and all of a sudden they see I was 21-year-old. But to my mother, I was still the baby of the family.
I think
You
the
know?
reason he changed his mind is because he realized within the speech that his father missed him and thought that he was dead, and not that his father was somehow involved in sending him down.
Absolutely. This is when I mentioned it, and it's one of the crucial things that definitely moved the Yosef's ideas. Remember when I said, my first thing that I said, that really they never sold him, and so on and so forth, and and he was wondering, Yosef was wondering, why didn't Papa come and look for me? Why didn't he look for me? And remember, I told you he probably assumed that the father was part of the plan. Right. So, and as you said, but now he hears Yehuda saying that the father thought he was dead. They assumed that, and that they all assumed that Yosef is no longer alive. So all of his ideas of what happened and why they did it, all goes flying out the window. That's exactly one of the most powerful approaches as to why he breaks down here. Correct. There are other things too. Yes.
I think he breaks down because he realizes my brothers don't hate me, my brothers love me, I'm part of the family. And it's a very emotional thing when you.
Well, I think that you're right. It isn't that
sense
clear.
Of love he
Yeah.
never felt. They hated him. You dreamer, you're usurping my position. Yehuda felt threatened by Yosef. What are you trying to do? He's usurped my position.
It seems that way. The only thing I can say, the only problem with that is I could tell you that all of the discussion about this missing son was only through the eyes of the father, not their father. He didn't say. No, I think what I said is true, but as I said, it isn't as clear as it should be because he only said, my father said this, and my father said, oh, my father really is missing him. It doesn't say, we really missed him, and we know he died, you know. But I still think you have a valid point. Yeah, someone else had something to say? Okay, so if I were to go through the whole thing, because you are very sensitive to it and you did pull out some things here, the most obvious thing to me is the very last part. How can I go back to my father unless the boy is with me? They don't know that Yosef is their brother. And when they say, your servant, our father, they have no idea that they're talking about Yosef's father. So when he says, what am I going to do with my father? That hits Yosef very powerfully. He hasn't seen Tati, for 22 years. The guy who loved him so much, who gave me this good-looking coat, this is Yaakov, and he hadn't seen him. Maybe he, as I was saying, he was angry with him, wondering why he didn't help him. Maybe. But after, even if he's angry with him, he sees that my father is very, very old. I do want to see him. And he says, he's going to die if I hold on. That really breaks, I think it's a very powerful thing. It's also powerful because Yehuda, who some 22 years earlier had no problem wanting to sell Yosef to the Ishmaelim, he didn't say then, I'd like to sell to the Ishmaelim, but we're going to have to go home and it'll hurt Papa a lot. Our father is going to be very hurt if we go. He didn't say that then. And they ignore that, But now he is saying that. And that Yosef sees also. Whether he did, or whether Yehuda did sell, or whether Yosef assumed it was he who had him sold, either way, they now realize the pain they had caused to the father. And that also was very important. That in effect, there's remorse, there's regret, there's tshuva at that point, right? And that's one reason, certainly part of the reason. But it's not the only reason, because when you think about this, when you look at this whole soliloquy, you'll notice that when Yehuda says, I'll stay as your eved, as your slave, as your servant, instead of the Binyamin, he already said that. He already said, Hinenu avadim lefaro. We are all going to be, servants, and that didn't move Yosef at all. So why did this now that he offers himself would be enough to let him break down? And this is a long soliloquy. It's the longest speech in all of Bereshit, Sefer Bereshit. No one talks that much. It's at one time. So this long speech, why? Why did he have to go through all of this instead of just saying, I'll be the Eved and let my brother go? Why did he go through the whole history of what happened? You said this, and I said this. You said this, but then you said this, and I said this, and then my father. Why was that thing? And the Mefarshim, the commentators ask that question all the time. And the Ramban addresses the problem, and he shares the answer. That's in source number 2. The Ramban, I started getting smart now. Instead of just translating it, I just sort of give the overview of what he says. You see it in the bottom of that first page in source number 2. The Ramban argues that the basic reason for this protracted speech of Yehuda, one that merely repeated the facts already known to Yosef, was in order to tug on the heartstrings of Yosef. Makes it very emotional, let's face it, by focusing on their reluctance to bring the youngest son to Egypt and the danger it would present to the survival of the brother. And not too subtly, by in effect accusing Yosef as the one who would have been causing the whole unnecessary fiasco. Then the whole story, you're the ones who told me we have to bring down Binyamin. If it weren't for that, this wouldn't happen. He wouldn't have stolen the goblet. He wouldn't have been here. That was your idea. Why? Because you said we're spies. And you came back and, yeah, you're right, you're not spies. All of that was your fault, Yosef. Didn't say that. But by reviewing the whole story, you said this, we said that, we said it's hard, but you said you have to. I had to, but we got, In effect, he's saying, think about this, O Viceroy. It's your fault. You brought this whole thing. And that's a very powerful thing. Yeah.
It's just tremendous courage for him to say that, because got into big trouble.
And done it very, very subtly. And that's why he does it very subtly. And that's why Chazal go crazy and they say, gosh, Yehuda, what power, but, and it's funny, if Chazal go through this and they make it like he stood there and said, you think you're like Paro. Yeah, he's a liar and you're a liar. He goes, you look at the Medrash, what they say, but that Yehuda was saying. Realistically speaking, he's not going to do that. He has to be very careful with what he says. But he puts in with the story, which is basically a very true story of what happened. Hey, Yosef, think about it more objectively. Why is this happening? Well, you're blaming us? Well, yeah, but who else is to blame? You are. You've caused all of this. You have caused all of this. Yes.
As the grandmother of the grandson who disappeared, and after 10 years, a detective supposedly found the man who killed him, and he
was going to give us the body and everything, but his gang kills him that night. So we know nothing except what the detective said, that he was killed and his body is someplace in India.
Mm-hmm.
So when you know nothing, it gives you
Yeah.
a very empty feeling and you want to find out as much as you can.
What we say nowadays is closure. You want the closure. I know he's gone, but if I can bury him, if I can go over and say Tehillim on the grave, there's a closure. There's a closure. Without that closure, it's very, very difficult. No question about it. No question. Thank you. You're right. You're right. So this is, this is perhaps another reason Yehuda hopes that Yosef is now going to have second thoughts as to doing that, but maybe I am to blame here. Maybe I'm responsible a little here, It's also true that there's a constant repetition of Hanar, Hanar, Hanar. And as you pointed out, you think he's 25. He's 32 years old. Tatala is 32. Why the term of Hanar, Hanar? That's something also that Yehuda purposely uses in order to let Yosef understand how Yaakov sees this child. You see him as a 32-year-old with kids, which he had. My father sees him as a nar. He's a little boy. He's a tatala. Yeah. I have to stop, unfortunately. But every tragedy now. Oh, goody! We reached 800 soldiers were killed. Isn't that wonderful? That was yesterday. But you look and you see, it's a 19-year-old tatala. It's a little boy. It just breaks your heart. Breaks your heart. Young people, my God. And that's what Yosef hopes to do. I'm sorry, what Yehuda hopes to do to this viceroy, look at this, what you're doing. And he doesn't say, let us go. He says, I'll be the slave, but let him go. Very powerful. Another reason why he breaks down. And in Mirza Hashem, what I want to do next time, I have it actually the very page 2. Is it page 2? Yeah, right. Which we're going to see the story as Yehuda tells a story, as opposed to the reality, the objective view versus the subjective view of what really took place. And we'll see what differences there are that we know from the text and how it's being used. That's be the next time. Okay? Okay, thank you very much.